So, welcome to meeting number 17 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. This meeting is taking place in hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. And let me make a few comments for the benefit of witnesses, most of whom are joining us on Zoom. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Also, at the bottom of your screen, you can select the appropriate channel for interpretation, either floor, English, or French. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. And do remember our amazing interpreters who do such a great job. Don't speak too fast, and certainly don't bang around your microphones. So thank you so much for that. And pursuant to Standing Order 108.2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, September 18th, 2025, the committee resumes its study of the forestry industry. And I'd like to welcome our witnesses. We have on Zoom from the Assembly Corporation, Jeff Cape, Chief Executive Officer. Also on Zoom, Susan Yurkovich, President and Chief Executive Officer of Canfor Corporation. And in the room, we have Scott Hughes, President of Hupaco Wood Products. Thank you all for appearing today. We will begin with opening remarks, and you will have 5 minutes or less each. And Mr. Cape, we're going to start with you, so you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to address this urgent issue, the future of Canada's forest industry and the critical role that wood-based manufacturing housing can have. As noted, my name is Jeff Cape, and I'm the CEO of Assembly Corp. It's a company that's been around now for 7 years, a Canadian company that designs and fabricates wood buildings. The products we build are closely linked to sawmills and secondary wood manufacturers, allowing us to translate Canadian lumber into high-performance housing systems. Recently, Assembly participated in a tour of Swedish factories with the Canadian Wood Council, and through that experience, we learned a series of lessons related to how several new federal strategies in Canada here, Budget 2025, Build Canada Homes, and the Buy Canadian policy, together with the federal softwood lumber transformation and tariff response packages, can participate in solving some of our challenges. First, on the development of new value-added wood products and market diversification. The Swedish experience shows that success comes not only from advanced technologies, but also from a confidence in factory-based housing built through policy and customer experience. Factory-built houses are regarded as a higher quality product in Sweden as they are in many Northern European countries. Canada is creating similar strategies and has committed $2.2 billion to help transform the softwood lumber industry in this regard. Secondly, the importance of wood for housing and carbon neutrality. The recently launched Build Canada Homes program is mandated to scale modern methods of construction, including factory-built wood systems for housing. And it's expected to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in new annual demand for Canadian wood products as it deploys its initial $13 billion investment. The softwood transformation agenda should be fully integrated with this plan. Thirdly, regarding public procurement, Canada must move from short-term programs to a platform for industrialized construction and economic development. The Build Canada Homes program will prioritize multi-year shovel-ready housing projects that use Canadian wood and the Buy Canadian policy framework to require federal contracts to prioritize Canadian materials, including lumber. To make this real, I believe the procurement needs to commit to multi-year pipeline of manufactured housing projects to help incentivize the capitalization of factory programs. It needs to create a strategic industrialization fund with federal loan guarantees to de-risk private investment And I'm aware that BTC is considering this, but within the ISED family, there are other channels at Industry Canada to support this industry strategy. And it also has to reform RFPs and payment terms, the contract structures for these suppliers so they can get paid a meaningful share during the manufacturing process and not just on delivery of housing. So there are a series of policy initiatives that need to be made to help facilitate this industry's growth. On the forest management issue and this notion of vertical integration, Canada has begun to pivot from raw log exports towards forest to factory to housing model. And the federal softwood package includes loan guarantees and funding to incentivize and increase domestic processing, including support for Indigenous forestry businesses and an opportunity to diversify products and markets, all of which should be linked to housing demand. Respecting the provincial and territorial jurisdictions, I think the next big step on that in this regard is to harmonize codes and to help fast track approvals for certified factories using tools like CSA 277. And by pairing digital permitting and pre-approved designs, Canada can reduce interprovincial barriers and allow factory-approved wood housing to move more rapidly across jurisdictions. And finally, on workforce, on the need for training in workforce, the sector needs targeted investments in training for offsite construction, industrialized design, and logistics. Federal workforce and transition programs, along with Budget 25 skills investments, can be directed towards regional manufacturing hubs and high-profile projects to build skilled employment. I'll end with this kind of view that the effects on the Canadian lumber industry could be enormous. Federal policies such as those under the Build Canada Homes Initiative emphasize certified Canadian wood systems. And if this becomes the norm, the lumber industry could, and this is the negative, I'll begin with the negative, I'll end with the positive. The lumber industry could see a decrease in per unit use of wood by 20 to 30% due to the efficient use of wood and engineered products and the optimization of material. But over the next 5 to 10 years, the mass timber market should grow by well in excess of $1 billion. And in the process, help cut embodied carbon by 40%. And yep.
Thank you for ending on that positive note. And
always good.
And now we're going to go on to Ms. Yurkovich. You have 5 minutes or less. Thank you, Mr. Kate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to share some views on behalf of CANFOR as part of your study. I think looking at your record, I know you've heard from a number of people about the importance of forestry to the Canadian economy, the 200,000 direct jobs the sector supports, and the families and communities across our country that make a living and a good life in the forest products industry. And I think you've also heard about the critical importance of securing a trade agreement with the U.S. So that Canadian producers can fairly access our largest market. I share these views and like to complement them with a few thoughts from CANFOR's perspective. Canadian Forest Products, or CANFOR, is proudly headquartered in Vancouver, BC. Our company started out as a single family-owned sawmill on the banks of the Fraser River in the 1930s, initially employing about 28 people. And now, nearly 9 decades later, CANFOR has grown into one of Canada's largest diversified forest products companies, employing 2,700 people in Canada and operating globally, including facilities in the U.S. South and in Sweden. In BC and Alberta, our operations include 8 sawmills, 2 pulp mills, specialty paper and lumber facilities, a tree nursery, and a green energy plant. And success in our sector depends on 2 critical things: secure, predictable access to sustainably grown timber, and secure, reliable access to markets, most notably the U.S., our largest trading partner. For decades, however, our sector has faced unfair duties that harm both Canadian workers and U.S. consumers. As a mandatory respondent in the seemingly endless rounds of softwood lumber dispute, our company has spent thousands of hours and millions of dollars on litigation. We are one of the largest duty payers, having paid cash deposits now totaling more than $1 billion since 2016. And with our combined duty rate now at 57.6%, we expect to pay more than $100 million again in 26. So without question, this is placing a tremendous financial burden on our company and companies across the country. We acknowledge and appreciate the significant efforts of the Government of Canada and the Embassy in Washington to advance our interests with the administration and work towards a new agreement. We also recognize the challenges involved in getting to the negotiating table and know that U.S. protectionism on softwood is a bipartisan issue, and we have faced duties with both Republican and Democratic administrations alike. So to mitigate the impacts of U.S. duties and tariffs, we're focused on things that we can control, deriving more value from our operations, controlling costs, operating safely, and exploring ways to retool some of our Canadian operations to create higher value products for customers and for here and around the world. And while we are controlling what we can, we also believe that there are actions that government can take to support companies in the near term and offer the 5 following recommendations. First, we appreciate the loan programs introduced by the federal government to support liquidity, including measures to aid workers. Meaningful, easy to access, and provide immediate relief. Second, as we assess the potential investments in our Canadian operations that could further diversify products and markets, federal support could be instrumental in making this possible. Establishing a federal capital investment fund could expedite projects to retool facilities to create higher value-added products and expand into markets that are not subject to duties and tariffs. We're assessing potential investments in both our BC and Alberta operations that could benefit from such a fund and would welcome the opportunity to discuss how a program like this could be structured. Third, as a market leader in exports to Asia and a company that operates in Canada, the US, and Europe, our team has a strong understanding of global opportunities for Canadian wood products. We support intensified overseas marketing and diversification efforts across all industries, including forestry, and believe that restoring meaningful funding for market expansion initiatives is required to support this effort. We would also encourage the inclusion of the forest sector in any future Team Canada trade missions. Fourth, as government works to streamline approvals for major nation-building projects, we'd urge a similar approach for all industries working on the land base. We note the announcement of a new task force for the forest sector, which represents an opportunity to assess cost competitiveness, productivity, regulatory burden, and streamline permitting both federally and provincially. And we'd be happy to contribute to this work, but are mindful of the need for urgency. This work must yield outcomes and not simply be more thought and study. And finally, the Canada Revenue Service could help our sector by expediting corporate tax refunds for 2024's tax year. Canfor filed our return in June of 25, and we are still awaiting a refund. And issuing refunds as early as possible would provide immediate liquidity that could help us pay the significant duty obligations we face today and in the months ahead. Thanks for the opportunity to present, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Yurkovich. And now we're going to go on to Mr. Hughes. Mr. Hughes, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, honourable members, colleagues from across the forestry value chain, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Scott Hughes, and I'm second-generation owner of Upaka Wood Products Limited. Canada's forest sector employs 600,000 direct and indirect jobs and is the economic backbone of nearly 300 communities. Yet, we are losing ground in global markets. If we want a strong, sustainable industry today and beyond, we must act decisively on 6 fronts. The first, countervailing and anti-dumping duties. The United States has imposed duties averaging over 20% on Canadian softwood lumber for decades, with the latest round, I thought it was 35, but I was corrected, it's now 57.6%. These duties have already cost our industry more than $7 billion since 2017 alone. The raised housing costs in the United States shrink our market share and force more curtailments and permanent closures from British Columbia to Atlantic Canada. This is the longest-running trade dispute in North American history. Over 40 years and 5 full trade wars, Canada has won the legal argument at least 15 times at NAFTA, CUSMA, and the World Trade Organization panels. Yet every time we win, the U.S. lobby restarts the clock. We must keep fighting legally, but we also must negotiate a long-term managed trade agreement that finally ends this cycle. Anything less is surrender. Second, the federal government's role in market diversification and value-added production. Yes, we must diversify. Europe, Japan, South Korea, India, the Middle East, but let's be crystal clear. We cannot simply switch markets and walk away from the United States. The United States takes 75% of everything we cut. No other market or combination of markets can absorb that volume in the next 5, 10, or even 15 years. Mills will close, towns will hollow out, and thousands of families will lose their livelihoods long before new export corridors mature. Retooling a single mid-sized sawmill to produce European-spec lumber and pallets costs $50 to $100 million and takes 18 to 24 months, money and time that many producers do not have, where duties are eaten at the cash flow. Meanwhile, Brazil is already shipping European-spec pine and pallets into the European Union at 20 to 30% lower cost than us. Diversification is not a life support, it's a long-term growth strategy. In the short and medium term, our survival still depends on regaining full, duty-free access to the American market. This is why aggressive negotiation with Washington must remain job one. Everything else, value-added fund, trade missions, retooling grants is vital, but it buys us time, but does not buy us survival. Third, the unique importance of wood and housing and carbon neutrality. For over 20 years, I worked hand in hand with architects and engineers across Ontario designing roof trusses and floor systems for single-family homes, townhouses, and low-rise buildings. My job is to squeeze every last board foot out of a load of lumber so families can afford a safe, high-quality home. I know firsthand that wood is the most versatile, cost-effective, and climate-friendly building material that we have. A typical 2,000-square-foot family home built with Canadian lumber stores about 30 tons of carbon dioxide. A 20-story mass timber tower sequesters about 3,500 tons, the same as taking 900 cars off the road for a year. If we simply raise the share of wood-frame single-family homes, mid-rise, and tall wood buildings from today's roughly 12% to 30% by 2035, we will cut millions of tons of emissions while creating tens of thousands of rural jobs. Yet, right now, our home builders, the single largest consumer of Canadian dimensional lumber after pallets and crates, are being strangled by red tape. We cannot hit our housing targets or our climate targets unless we fast-track builders who choose wood. Give them presumptive approval for proven systems and stop treating the renewable Canadian lumber as if it was a problem instead of a solution. Fourth, a national public procurement policy that favors wood. A simple wood-first policy for federally funded buildings would create stable domestic demand and show real leadership on climate and jobs. Fifth, sustainable forest management practices. Canadian forests are among the best managed on Earth. Over 90% of harvested areas are promptly regenerated, and over 160 million hectares are third-party certified. Good management keeps the forest healthy in a changing climate. We need to tell that story loudly and proudly. Sixth, and finally, to respect provincial and territorial jurisdictions. Forests are constitutionally provincial. Ottawa sets national goals and provides funding and coordination, never micromanagement. Real progress only happens when we work with true partners. In closing, we stand at crossroads. We can keep bleeding jobs while we wait for new markets that would take a generation to build, or we can fight like hell to keep the U.S. market open while we diversify, innovate, and build more Canadian homes, pallets, wood packaging, and other wood products with Canadian wood. The choice is ours, and the time is now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hughes. Thank you to all of our presenters. We're now going to go on to our rounds of questions. We're going to start with Mr. Tucker for 6 minutes. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you for our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Cap, I understand you're zooming in. Are you at home by chance, or is that at the office?
This is at home.
At home. And do you live in one of these prefab factory homes?
No,
That's okay. Many Canadians don't. And as much as the Brookfield model and the business that they're trying to push is popular with some people, most Canadians have concern. Switching to Mrs. Jurevich, I understand the decades that it took to build your company, family-owned business in British Columbia. And could you characterize what the last 10 years have been like for families that are employed with your company?
Well, it's been it's challenging to be working in the forest sector. It's a very competitive business, as you know, and of course we have at least we've had periods of managed trade and we've had very few moments of free trade, but mostly we've been operating under a tariff regime, which makes it extremely challenging. It requires our companies to be extremely cost focused and also to try and remain competitive, to be able to serve our customers and to be able to continue to compete in a global space. So it's meant...
For the last 10 years, have there been that many raises for the workers?
Well, we try and keep pace with the market. So yes, we've had adjustments, but it's still it's, you know, we continue to employ highly skilled workers, and we pay them fairly, but we have fewer workers for sure in Canada because of the challenges of operating here.
And you said decades. So let's compare that to the decade prior. So before 2015, what was that decade like? Because you did reference decades. Was that a better decade?
Well, in British Columbia, where we has been traditionally where we started our business and where the heart of our business has been for you know, many generations, we have of course experienced a very significant shift in the availability of fiber, mostly because of the mountain pine beetle epidemic, followed by very difficult fire seasons. So the cut has come down substantially in the province of British Columbia.
So, but just comparing those two decades, you're saying that the last 10 years have been better than those conservative government years that had tariff peace with the states, and especially with Softwood lumber deal?
Well, we had very good years during COVID. Everyone knows that. We had a black swan event where we had very strong lumber markets. So that would have been something that was unseen in the industry. I mean, ever.
And
We've
just
never
talking a little bit about the
prices that high.
American negotiation, you said that we had troubles negotiating a deal with, it was nonpartisan is the verbiage I believe you used, the Republican and Democrats, but that's been under the past Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Mark Carney hasn't been able to get a deal under either one, correct?
The last softwood lumber agreement we had was done under Prime Minister Harper.
In what year was that?
It ran from 2006 to 2015, and then there was a standstill period for 1 year, and then this latest round, Lumber 5, we affectionately call it, started in 2017.
So I would assume that you would say the last decade was better than the previous 2 decades ago was better than the last decade.
Well, duties is not the only thing that makes the business good or difficult, but we had a lumber agreement between 2006 and 2016, which creates some stability. And I would say that we had very good years during the COVID years, and then we've had, you know, challenging markets, a lot of uncertainty, and very high duties currently.
All right. Switching gears to our witness that's in the room, thank you so much for being here today. We talked about this last decade, the lost decade under the Liberals. What was your experience with the workers that have experienced these 2 decades, along the same vein as comparing those 2 decades?
Okay, that's a very difficult answer to give. The industry I'm in, which is the wood packaging industry, fluctuates depending on demand, and our clients, most of them, cater to the U.S. market. It's hard to say whether or not things were better under Harper or better under Trudeau. I mean, we've had good years under Trudeau, we've had good years under Harper. But this latest round has resulted in almost an 80% loss in business for me, and that's significant.
Did you have any years like that under the Conservative government?
If I recall correctly, we probably had some turmoil back in the I believe it was around 2010, give or take, when we had that world crisis with the economy worldwide.
Yeah.
We managed to get through it without too much of an impact.
Right. And how would you characterize when you heard Mark Carney promise a deal by July 21st? Was that encouraging news when you heard the Prime Minister say that?
It was encouraging news, but what I was seeing from my customers was a decline in orders. Yeah. So this started before that promise was made.
Thank you both.
And not kept.
We are going to go on to Mr. Danko for 6 minutes. Mr. Danko.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to Mr. Cape. You spoke in your opening remarks about Buy Canadian. Of course, the federal government is committed to Buy Canadian policy, and we're also expecting provincial governments to follow suit. But really, a lot of construction happens at the municipal level, whether it's rec centers or housing projects, and also private sector and institutional. So I'm interested in what recommendations you would have to ensure that private sector, institutional, and municipal projects are also using primarily Canadian products?
Thank you. I mean, there's no doubt that right now the industry is struggling with the demand side problems. So a substantial push will come with the federal commitment. The Build Canada Homes initiative under the Carney government is going to kind of, I expect it will catalyze the industry and begin to create some forward momentum. The showcasing of both modular and wood housing under this kind of new approach to fabricated offsite construction, I think should create confidence and create the momentum in the private sector to move in this direction. Typically, the private sector is slow in this regard. They're governed under heavy banking relationships and contract structures that inhibit them in a strange way, that more so than, say, government has the opportunity to operate. And so I think the federal policy around procurement should catalyze and prime the pump, so to speak, for private markets to then follow suit.
Thank you. Second question is for Ms. Yurkovich. Canfor is known to have a very diversified market share. In particular, I heard in your opening remarks that you actually have facilities in Sweden, so you're selling to a global market, including in Sweden, who is, of course, a world leader. And you spoke about support programs for retooling facilities so that Canadian producers can be more competitive on mass timber, engineered wood products on the global stage. So I want to give you an opportunity to expand on what that framework would look like and what you need from the federal government to make that happen.
Thanks. I think what we'd like to be able to do is go higher up the value chain. We are dimension lumber producers. We have a lot of dimension. We also have specialty, but there's opportunities for us to further go up the value chain and look for market opportunities that would be duty exempt or which would apply to markets that don't have tariffs or duties. The challenge for us is, as you can imagine, when you have $1 billion on deposit, that's money that's not being spent on plant and equipment. That's sitting over in the U.S. Treasury or wherever it sits. And it's not able, we don't have access to it to invest in plant and equipment and our people. And so capital, as you can imagine, is extremely constrained. So as we look at these opportunities at a time to diversify away from the U.S. or some of our production away from the U.S., it's a time when we don't have a lot of capital to spend. In fact, we are looking at every single dime, of course, as many other companies are. So having some kind of matching fund or grant or, forgivable loan that allowed us to retool some of our operations to be able to meet, to go into those additional product areas or to diversify further away from the United States would be really helpful and would, I think, be a way for us to transition. As we talk about Build Canada Homes, these are other things that allow us to find different markets and move our product to areas that are duty-free.
Thank you. And just a follow-up on that. I'm sure you've done detailed market sector evaluations. So I'm curious if you would like to share what markets you see as having the most potential and what products in those markets do you see as preferable?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging and it moves a lot. I mean, we used to send a lot of our product into, when we had more low-grade beetle-impacted wood, we sent a lot of our product into China, but that's changed. Obviously, we have moved through the beetle-impacted wood or salvage wood, and we are now into more green stands. And so those are higher value stands, and we want to take that fiber and maximize the value we can derive from it. And of course, geopolitical shifts have occurred. There are sanctions on Russian wood and Belarusian wood, and so those avenues are, the avenues for them are closed. That wood does flow into China, and of course, that creates a challenge for us moving in there because it's a very price-sensitive market, and of course, when they have access to that wood, that can change things. So, there are other opportunities. There's more opportunities even with the declining population in Japan. We're switching more from traditional post and beam construction to 2x4 construction. Someone mentioned schools and rec centers. We think that that's an area where seniors' homes, institutional buildings where it has, we build homes with wood, but there are more opportunities to do it in that space. And so those are the things that we are pursuing, as well as some other higher value products that are used in, decorative applications, et cetera.
Thank you. And
That's your time.
that's my time.
Mr. Danko.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And it is now Monsieur Simard's turn.
Merci.
6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the sake of our witnesses, I'm just going to give you a few seconds to make sure that your headset is working and that you can hear the lovely voices of the interpreters. Can you hear them? Yes, good. So, before I start out, I just want to make sure that you know that when in English you say pellet, it's granule, because pallets are not pellets, and in French it's a different word. Anyway, moving on. I have a question for Ms. Yurkovich. Earlier, you referred to retooling the forestry sector. You also spoke about developing new markets. These are things that take time. And I'm saying this for this reason. I'm going to speak to you about an idea, and then we'll come back to this retooling and developing of new markets. There is a proposal that was brought forward by several players in the forestry industry in Quebec, by unions, etc. And the idea is a simple one. They're calling on the government to, at the end of the month, recover 50% of those countervailing and anti-dumping duties that are paid out to the states. And in that way, the government will get the rest of it at the end of the trade dispute. So we're not saying we want all of it back. We're not going to get all of that captive money, or up to about $11 billion. So I'd like to hear from you and from the other witnesses if you would agree with that idea. That is to say that 50% of those countervailing and anti-dumping duties are brought back, recovered at the end of each month, starting with you, Ms. Yurkovich.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. And yes, I did read through the transcripts, and I understand that that is an idea that has been floated. And I think we consider it. We've looked at all kinds of things and are looking at things that sort of balance trade risk with meaningful assistance for the industry. And I totally agree with you, sir, that it takes time to develop markets and build houses, et cetera. And so I think when we look for, from our perspective, we think, there's a variety of different programs that are going to be appropriate for companies. Our industry is very diverse. We have big companies, we have medium companies, we have small companies, and it's an ecosystem. We all live, we coexist, and we need each other. And so each company is going to have things that are better suited to them. From our perspective, that would be not something that we would particularly pursue, but we understand that some companies are pursuing that. The things that we are looking at are things that are going to allow us to transform and to thrive going forward. And I think, our focus is on, not transitioning away from the forest sector. We have to transition, and and that's going to take some time. So supporting some workers while we do this transition and helping us do these retoolings are the things that we would prefer, from our, being a company of our scale and scope.
Peut-être je vais continuer, puis je donne.
I'm just going to continue, and I would ask the other witness if they have answers as well to provide, if they could submit that in writing, because I have very little time. I'd like to come back to something else you said earlier on, Ms. Yurkovich. You spoke about some very interesting measures that might be of interest to the government because they don't cost anything, and governments always like things that don't cost anything. And it's this idea of accelerating the reimbursements, the refunds that you should be getting from the CRA. What amount of money does that represent? Because for you, that represents liquidity that would help you, doesn't it? For a business like your own, how much money would that represent?
it's for us, it's about $65 million, which then levers some provincial returns as well. So in total, it'd be about $80 million for us. And when you think about what we're paying in duties, that's very significant. That would help us. And I agree with you. Like, I think that's something that, it doesn't cost money. It's due back to us through our properly filed returns. And so that would be something that I would be grateful if the government could take a look at.
Je suppose que par le passé,
I assume that in the past you've made requests for financial support to the federal government, whether it be through your production chain, your processing chain, retooling. Have you ever in the past received any responses to the demands you've put to the federal government?
Are you asking me, sir?
tout à fait, oui.
Yes.
Well, I think the government has responded. They've created a loan program, which was announced a couple of weeks ago. One through BDC and then a larger one, so that's available. And of course, we have been very focused on.
Désolé de vous couper.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off. What I want to do is ask you if in the past did you receive any answers? For example, when you needed access to liquidity, or did you ever have access to any sort of funding to develop new technologies, new markets? So before the announcement of the BDC, did you ever have access to anything on the part of the federal government when it comes to support for the forestry industry?
Yes, there's been programs for market diversification, IFIT to help the pulp and paper industry. There have been programs that have been available.
Okay, that brings our first round of questions to a close. We're going to go on to the second round. Nous commencerons avec Monsieur Martel.
And we will begin with Mr. Martel. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Ms. Yurkovich. Just to circle back to what my colleague was saying, you were speaking about speeding up these refunds. How much time does it usually take when you need those or want those refunds before you end up getting them?
That's a question that I cannot answer. I just know that and I could get that answer to you, sir, but I know that we have made several inquiries and have been told that there's a number of reviews going on related to another program. And so we won't have access to those until that review is complete. So we have asked, and we've already sent a letter in to Minister Hodgson with respect to that.
Merci. Ma prochaine question.
Next question is for Mr. Hughes. Over the past few years, the lumber industry has gone through some very difficult times. Everyone knows that. There's been an absence of a new deal. Could you tell us, how has this affected your own operations and those of your colleagues?
Okay. What's recently happened is my customer base, which are other manufacturers that are shipping product to the United States or to the rest of the world, the orders have dropped significantly, about an 80% drop. With other companies, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But the biggest impact is the American customers are not buying our products. So my products that are going to the other manufacturers are not being used.
Oui, vous avez parlé de bureaucratie.
You referred to bureaucracy. Can you give us some concrete examples of how heavy that bureaucracy is?
Being said on the interpretation.
Le fait que il faut pour avoir droit sur.
Well, in order to have access to funding or subsidies, it can take a long time. You have to you have to actually meet several criteria.
Is that correct? Because I can't quite understand what's being said on the...
Oui. Oui.
Yes.
Not really asked for subsidies to help our industry. The last subsidy that we actually got was to upgrade our lighting system to a more energy efficient thing. But most of the equipment that we buy is all self-financed. We don't get any subsidies or rebates from the government for them. That's what you're asking.
Madame Yakovitch, je voudrais juste revenir. Vous
Ms.
avez dit,
Yurkovich, you mentioned that during COVID, the times were very good for the forestry industry. Can you tell me why it was such a good, why those were such good times for the forestry industry? I know there weren't necessarily any duties at the time, but.
Well, COVID wasn't a good time for any of us from a global perspective in terms of life and business. But what it did is constrain supply chains. And of course, everybody went home and they started to do projects like redo their deck or finish their basement or create space for themselves to work from home. So at that time, prices shot up to a level that we have never seen before. Lumber prices went up to $1,600 per 1,000 board feet, which was just extraordinary, and I don't expect we will see again ever, hopefully, not in my lifetime. And that has it went very far up, and now it has come back down very significantly. But obviously, prices running up meant we had very good markets for a period of 18 months to 24 months, and then, of course, it fell.
Monsieur Hogg,
Mr. Hughes, several businesses in your sector have mentioned that the combination of duties and other amounts like carbon pricing make accumulative costs prohibitive. Can you tell us how that has affected your own competitiveness and productivity?
That being put into place have driven up the cost of lumber, the cost of shipping. It's very hard to break down what the actual costs are. I'll have to look into that a little bit more and get back to you and write them.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to go on to Mr. Gay for 5 minutes. Mr. Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. Mr. Cape, I just want to tell you that we've heard you, and I hope it's going to be in our recommendation in terms of paying you through the building and factory. You're not the first to mention that. One question I have for you, and after that for Mrs. Yurkovich, is the government in budget 2025 has announced the super deduction that we call it for additional tooling for productivity, new equipment, to be able to write it off in the first year. Is this something you're taking advantage of? And if not, why not? Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, it's very important. I mean, the capital investments we need to make as a company are in the order of magnitude of $20 million for equipment, and probably the same again in the factory the factory building and infrastructure. So the opportunity to write that down quickly is a big advantage.
Mrs. Yurkovich?
We would take advantage of anything that supported our capital program, capital investment.
Mrs. Yurkovich, one of the another measure that was put in place, there's a $500 million that was allocated for the next fiscal year for programs for helping transformation, new equipment, new products, training employees. Is that something you've looked into or started to inquire about?
Yeah, we saw the announcement, and we're of course, it's relatively new. We're looking for details of all the things that were recently announced, including the ones that I think were announced last week, perhaps, or a little while ago, 10 days. All the days blend together, but around transportation, around the availability for those kinds of programs, we are looking for details, and I expect we will hear more from the line ministries in the next few weeks. So obviously those would be things that we would be interested in.
And I'm curious, Mr. Cape actually mentioned his trip to Sweden in terms of learning, but you actually operate in Sweden. What can we learn from that market?
Yes, we've expanded. We moved into Sweden in about 2019. And if you're a global company, you want to continue to serve your customers. As your customers are big and global, you want to be able to have the products and be able to serve them. I would say that, there's quite a few things that are different about Sweden. Where it's located is one. It has access to many, many markets. Obviously, freight and logistics is a big thing when you are producing a product like ours. You're shipping it a long way if you're shipping it to Europe, where they have access to many, many markets, whether it's in Europe, in the European Union, in the UK, in Middle East, North Africa, and even into the US East Coast. So they have a lot more market diversity. They also have highly specialized products that are sort of country specific. And so we have more product diversification there. And we have very secure fiber, very good and secure fiber there as well.
Thank you. Mr. Cape, I'm coming back to you. You talked about training the workforce as an important topic for you. I'm assuming, do you mean for tradespeople? Because in the budget, there's quite a bit of money for the different trades organization. Are we talking electrician, plumbers, or general? What are we talking about here? And do you think you can take advantage of that?
Oh, I know we can take advantage of it, and we've had a number of discussions with the various unions, trade unions in the Ontario area to understand what they think needs to happen. But yeah, these are both skilled and unskilled trade interests. The carpenters union alone is a useful partner in all of this work. The production of offsite housing is a different way of building, and there's a transitional process required there, but it's a manageable process and one that shouldn't take too long and creates a safer, more predictable employment opportunity with less risks for life safety and job security. So it's a worthwhile endeavor to engage in this.
Thank you.
Programs.
We're going to go on to Monsieur Simard at 2.5 minutes.
You have 2.5 minutes, MP Simard. Thank you very much. Mr. Cape, in your opening remarks, you spoke about your prefab production, and the government apparently is rolling out a huge program called Build Canada Homes. And we saw the government's program that was for access to liquidity. There were some failures there. Now it appears that it's easier to access that program. But I'm wondering about this program before it's rolled out, or before it is rolled out. Were you consulted on this Build Canada Homes program? Did you have any discussions with them? Because you're involved in prefab production, I would think that the government would want to hear your perspective before they roll out a program. Did you have any discussions with the department?
Participate with a series of consultations, but we also took the initiative to organize a group of about 106 companies from across Canada related to the supply chain associated with prefabricated housing, and 106 companies organized over a 3 to 4 month period and designed a series of 19 recommendations for short-term recommendations and 17 long-term recommendations. They were addressed comprehensively in the policy put forward in the budget.
Est-ce que c'est possible pour vous de fournir?
Would it be possible for you to provide the committee with the names of the businesses involved and the recommendations, the short-term and the long-term recommendations? And can you give us perhaps a little taste of them now? Maybe just tell us what some of the main recommendations were.
Yeah, happy to supply that. Some of the simple recommendations relate to procurement, which is, mandate the requirement or wood first as a priority in the procurement. Another would be to align policies across the country and across different political jurisdictions, municipal, provincial, and federal, to enable the faster approval processes. A third was to focus to create a not just market pull through procurement, but also market push to incentivize the federal government through BDC to invest in building the industry with an economic development agenda.
Très rapidement, parce que Monsieur le Président est très gentil.
Very quickly, just because the chair is so patient, it would be terrific if you could table the recommendations so that we can include some of those in our final report. Thank you, Mr. Simard.
You have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. My first question is for Mr. Hughes. Last week, our witness explained the uncertainty in the industry, and he's saying that the uncertainty was so bad that he'd rather have a bad deal now than a good deal later. And I was wondering if you could explain the struggles that's in your industry and the uncertainty and the struggles that come from the uncertainty from investors and whatnot, and how urgent to get a deal is.
Well, I'm not exactly saying to take a bad deal as opposed to a good deal. What I'm saying is I don't think there's enough effort on behalf of the Canadian representatives in negotiating with Washington.
Yeah, and you know we heard the message that it was going to. We heard the message that it was going to be speeds that we've never seen before, and building things and moving things at speeds we've never seen before. It must have been very disappointing to hear our Prime Minister say, "Who cares?" I mean, it's a detail. I've spoke with him, and I'll speak with him again when it matters, when we're talking about trade deals. Does those kind of statements build a little bit of trust and certainty for investors in Canada as well?
Well, I've decided a long time ago not to take a lot of faith in politicians' promises. And although it was nice to hear, I knew it was not going to be possible at the speeds that he was promising. It was unrealistic. I know negotiating with the Trump administration is going to be tough, but the businessmen, and as businessmen are well aware, you have to pull up your pants and discuss it and come up with a solution that works for both parties. Yeah. Sometimes it means a great deal, sometimes it means a deal that's not so good, sometimes it's going to be bad deals.
Yeah. And you talk about, making a deal and getting to that point. And you've talked about in the past, and you mentioned that we win in these court cases that we've had in the past with the Americans. We typically win those court cases. But do the companies like yourself, do they get reimbursed and for the struggles that they've went through? Or are they left out to have to deal with it on their own? Or is the damage already done?
Okay, well, my industry is not shipping directly to United States. We're not dealing with United States. We're dealing with other manufacturers that are putting their products in my wood package and shipping them to United States. Yeah. So the taxes or the duties don't really impact us. It impacts our customers, which in turn results in lower orders.
Yeah, you're left out in the cold, as some may say, and it's very tough to get that. So when it comes, you talked about just diverting to Europe and the struggles that there is with that, and you mentioned, feel free to build on that, but you also mentioned that Brazil is selling to the EU for 20 to 30% less. Why is it? How are they able to do that in this market?
Brazil is able to do it because they started producing European spec lumber many years ago. Brazil's biggest market is the European Union. So Canada's biggest market is the United States. So it's two completely different markets that we're dealing with. So for us to pivot, it's going to take us time and it's going to take a lot of money and effort.
Yeah. So do you think that a lot of regulations and all the red tape that we have and the industrial carbon tax for harvesting the wood products and all that, do you think that plays into it, or is it mostly just that they've been ahead of the game?
I believe it does.
Yes. So I just got one last question for you, and the Conservatives have been very adamant that we can improve the environment and reduce carbon emissions at the same time while supporting industry such as forestry, especially the forestry industry. And last week there was a Liberal MP who was on this committee, and I won't say his name out of respect, but he chuckled and alluded that our Conservative idea of increasing forestry to improve the environment is just silly. And I've seen that you've mentioned in your presentation about the carbon capture and the potential of actually helping the environment through proper forest management. And I'm wondering if you could set the record straight and talk more on how proper forest management can help our environment and reduce CO2 emissions to help climate change.
Okay, Canada sits on one of the largest forests in the world. We had a very good program managing our forestry. The association that I belong to has fought many battles over the years related to people that did not think that using trees was very smart. I don't know if you remember many years ago we were dealing with an issue with the spotted owl, which basically caused lumber production to slow down considerably because people are worried about the dangers. Now it's been proven that the forestry industry is actually very good for this country. The more we cut down, the more we grow, the better it is in terms of carbon storage, in terms of better environmental issues. But the forestry industry has to be on the ball with it. We have to maintain these forests properly. We have to ensure that fires are minimized as much as possible. Some of the information we've been getting, we've heard that more than 50% of the forest fires have been started by arson. Whether that's true, I don't know, but it's a very disturbing number.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Thank you to all of our...
Monsieur le Président.
Oh,
Excusez, Monsieur le
sorry.
Président.
Chair? Mr. Chair? I just want to make sure that Ms. Yurkovich can provide us with the time that it took to get her refund. Ms. Yurkovich, can you provide that information to the committee? And you also mentioned a letter to the minister. Could we also receive that from you?
Clerk, and we'll respond to the best of our ability. My apologies, Mr. Nur Mohammed. You know, it's a pleasure to have you on the committee this afternoon, and I apologize. Yeah, this isn't the first time this has happened when I've had a lapse, but the committee members are so forgiving, and I hope you will be too.
Absolutely.
You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. And Ms. Yurkovich, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you since your BC Hydro days. It's nice to see you. I want to start with Mr. Cape. You talked about the work that's being done in modular housing. I just wanted to talk a little bit because my friend opposite seemed quite condescending in respect of the modular homes that you are building. And I just wanted to point out that Ontario, under Premier Ford, Premier Moe in Saskatchewan, my friend's home province, Premier Houston, Premier Smith, Premier Lance, these are all conservative premiers. They have put in between them over $50 or $60 million in recent months into building modular housing. Note it's a big part of the housing strategy for their regions. In fact, there are companies like True North Homes, Prairie Castle, Laser Homes, Grunter Homes, all of which are from Saskatchewan. So, Mr. Cape, when you hear the type of misinformation or denigration of modular homes that are being built to create homes quickly for Canadians, and you hear this misinformation, what concerns does it pose for companies like yours that are doing this work when the entire industry and the work that you're doing is somehow misrepresented or seen to be less than other types of housing?
Yeah, it is misinformation. It's unfortunate because it kind of harkens back to the portable classroom in a schoolyard, or these kind of tin can type trailer park homes. And the reality is, I would prefer to live in a manufactured homes. They are the preferred choice in Sweden because they're higher quality. I'm in an 120-year-old house that leaks a lot, and I've got little breezes in virtually every corner, especially on cold days. The building envelope and the R value, the energy efficiency for a passive light house that we are building is a superior product in every regard. And that is a preferred solution for most people. And quite frankly, that is one of the stigmas we need to move beyond as quickly as we can, is to establish the high quality of these units.
And I want to give you a little bit more time to respond to this because a number of these companies are based in Saskatchewan, the home province of my friend opposite, who made some of these comments. What would you say to Canadians that are watching this, apart from what you've already said about the importance of supporting these Canadian companies that are doing great work in this space?
Well, I'd say that, Canadians used to build housing by chopping down logs in a forest and squaring off the logs. And then we learned about 2x4s and dimensional lumber. And all we're talking about is taking the next level of completion in a factory in a predictable space, making a higher quality product. It's economic development. It's productivity that the country needs. We as a nation are known to be good quality house builders. This is just taking the next step to be global leaders.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Yurkovich, if I could just switch to you now.
Point of order, Chair. This is like almost an advertisement for portable homes from Brookfield.
That's debate, Mr. Tucker, as you know, and so we'll go back to Mr. Nur Mohammed. You have 1 minute and 48 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take those 4 seconds back as well, if I might. Mrs. Yurkovich, I just wanted to lean in a little bit on some of the challenges, of course, we're facing in British Columbia. As you pointed out, there's, as we all know, there's lots of dollars, billions of dollars that are now sitting in abeyance as a result of duties and tariffs. Can you perhaps walk some of the members of the committee through that may not be as familiar, some of the issues that are provincial in nature that have to be dealt with in respect to supporting the industry more substantially? Where can provinces be doing more to ensure that they are making it easier for your industry and the workers that you employ?
Sure. I mean, I think what we have opportunity to address is the hosting conditions. It's a very competitive marketplace, and I think what we could have is a focus on regulatory regimes, and we want to have good, strong regulation. That's what we want as Canadians. We want to have good, sustainable forest practices, which we do. But I think there's an opportunity for us to streamline permitting, to reduce duplication of some of the regulation that we have, and to create more hosting conditions that allow us to compete on the global marketplace. And of course, as I mentioned in my remarks, the most important thing is access to fiber. And so we do have a cut that stands at about, based on the Chief Forester's, the Chief Forester sets the allowable annual cut, and we are not cutting up to that level. We're about half of that right now, and so that's putting a real strain in terms of accessing secure access to fiber, and I think there's more work we have to do there.
Thank you both. That does bring our time to an end with this panel. And once again, thank you to our witnesses. Very informative testimony. Also, as we do every meeting, invite you to submit briefs for things that you didn't get a chance to say today. The committee would welcome them. And once again, thank you so much.